I think what we're going to do now is let Kelly talk. She's got a spreadsheet that she wants to share with you all. And I'll bring that up. Kelly, you want to put on the microphone? We're recording these presentations. We're going to post them on our YouTube channel. And I introduced Kelly in the field, but she's just finished her master's at Virginia Tech, and she is now starting her PhD. Which one do you want up, Kelly?
That one.
She's now starting her PhD. We haven't even decided what her project is going to be on yet. She started last week. Monday was her first official day, I guess. And we're very happy to have her here. She's got a strong dairy background. She grew up on a small dairy farm in Wisconsin. She's got four sisters or three sisters?
Three sisters.
Three sisters. Her dad raised 4 girls on 50 cows. So Kelly told me once that she always thought they were poor growing up, but her dad was saving them money.
And now he has a Harley and a camper and a new truck,
Yeah.
so.
All right, so go ahead and tell us about what you got here.
All right, so this is the spreadsheet that I put together when I was working as an intern on a ranch in South Dakota. And so when we were doing the grazing stick, we were talking about how some people just get attuned to it. They can say that, you know, there's how many grazing days in that pasture. And that's exactly the story when I was out doing my pasture measurements. I'd go out with my stick, I made this nice little spreadsheet, and I'd be like, hey, look, boss, we can keep our cows there for 7 days. He'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. Like that was the same calculation he did in his head. So me as a young student, I was putting all the hard work in, whereas he had known it already. So essentially what this graph, or the spreadsheet does is, on the left in column B, we can put in all those inputs that we were talking about in the field. So we can put in our grass height, that's the right here. We do our weight, like that's how we use that stick to tell us, hey, we had 250 pounds to the inch. And actually I've got the chart down here. So this is the one I used, since most of those were small grains, or we had an extra, a different one for the annual ryegrass. So if we had a really good stand, I used that 400 pounds per inch. But so most of these I was going, 200, or if it was one of those really nice lush stands, I did 250 pounds to the acre per inch.
So that's per inch of sward.
Yep.
Every inch of grazable sward would have 250 pounds of dry matter per acre.
And then I've got a line in here saying how much residual you want to leave. And so if you're just going to hit these small grains hard once, we would say you could graze it down to the ground. So you'd have 9 inches of grazable height. Whether that's realistic or not, we're not sure yet. And then here's our utilization percent. And that's going to change based on how quick your rotations go. And this table right here, table 2, that kind of gives you an idea of if you're doing continuous stocking, 30 to 40%, and it's just going to increase the quicker you rotate through there. And you can do a calculation to figure out what exactly your utilization rate is. If you want to get more specific than these tables, and it's probably going to change throughout the year. So it's just one of those things that it's interesting to know, and it might help you if you're a person who likes to do these spreadsheets and things. It might be beneficial.
The one thing to understand about utilization rate is that the smaller we make our paddocks or our pastures, the higher our utilization rate, because they're not, the animals aren't as selective. They're selective grazers, and no matter how hard we try, we'll never get 100% utilization. They're always going to be walking on something, or urinating, or defecating on something, or laying down on something in a pasture. So by having them on a pasture, a smaller pasture for a shorter period of time, we tend to increase our utilization rate.
So then in the middle, we've got our forage demand, how many cows we have, or steers or calves, whatever, how big they are, and then what percentage of their body weight they're going to be eating. So a dry cow is going to eat a different percent than a lactating cow. So That would be table 3 down here. We've got our dry cows eating about 2% of their body weight, where the lactating cows 3 or 4. So if you break your herd up by, throughout the year, it's probably going to change if you've got a set breeding season. And then eventually you can put in how big your pasture is right over here, 25 acres. And then it'll spit out right down here how many days you can graze your cows in that specific pasture. So what we can do is, all the yellow boxes are things you can change. And then you'll notice that all of the green boxes will change as we add something. So here I'm going to bump up our number of animals to 150, and we'll see what that does to our grazing days. It knocks it down by half, which is kind of something that we would, kind of intuitive. But if we go and change our grass height, let's say we got on a little bit late, and we'll say they're up to 14 inches, so a lot more dry matter there. We can give them a longer time on that pasture. So this is just kind of something that you can play around with. You can kind of do it in reverse. If you say we had if you say you only wanted them on for 5 days, you could change how many animals you have, because you can't really control the grass height. You can't say you have more than there is actually there. But if we put this back to 9 inches, what was the average that we were getting out there today for all those plots? We could mess with how many cows we have. Say we want to get down to 5 days. We would drop it down to, or you would need a lot more cows, essentially. So it's just something that you can play around with, and you can kind of use it to say, how long can I stay in this pasture, or how many cows do I need in order to graze this pasture down in a certain number of time. So I can pass around a sign-up sheet if any of you guys are interested. You can either give me your email or something like that, and then I can just send you this spreadsheet. You can make improvements to it. I mean, by no means is it perfect, but it worked for what I wanted it to work for. And it'll have these different, it's got the calculations that I used. So here I've got how I got into my outputs. So if you don't like how I did that, if you don't want to put in how much residual, or like that can be changed. So here, if we wanted to bump it up to, let's say, a 2-inch residual height, that means they're only going to be able to graze for 8 days. So so I've got those calculations, so you can really see how I was doing things. And then here I just put a log if you want to keep track of how long you actually grazed in a certain pasture versus what the spreadsheet was telling you. And then maybe that can help just as a decision-making tool. But here you'll see all the little charts that I used in order to kind of get an idea for what I wanted to put number-wise into my calculations. So I guess that's about it for the, is there any questions on this spreadsheet before I move on? Yeah. Yep. Right. Yeah, so this is just if you had a 25-acre pasture, and I can.
That's for the forages standing in the field at that day.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that gets confusing about forages is that, guess what? They grow back. Yeah. So you'll graze them and then take the animals off, and then they'll grow back, and you'll get another grazing event, hopefully within that field. Small grains are a little bit different because you're removing that growing point. But
Kelly, we were kind of patterned this off the grazing field, fine. But just watching you demonstrate this, the thought came to mind, and not only for you producers, but county agents as well. We get calls all the time. Somebody saying, I want to go into cattle, or I'm starting a new farm, I've got 60 acres of pasture, I want to do rotational grazing, what should I do? And in that conversation, you can say, well, can you divide your farm up into 4 pastures, 5 pastures? I like that magical 8 pattern. We talk about a lot of grazing schools. You can run some numbers and some scenarios with per pattern.
Mhm.
5 days a week in each paddock, you know, you kind of divide up your field based on your acreage, how long you want to graze each field.
And how many animals could handle that 25 acres of
Right.
land. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of angles you can come at this thing. Yeah, this is pretty, so, pretty neat tool.
This is the fun part of grazing systems, is that everyone's different, and you can really build some flexibility. When you set your grazing system up, if you're thinking about setting your grazing system up, make sure and look at other grazing systems and get input from other people, and then kind of formulate yours to fit your needs. But the one thing that you always want to put in a grazing system is flexibility to change. That is so important, because as you grow as a grazer, and as your pasture productivity increases through better management, you know, you'll want to do different things within that system, and you want to have the ability to make those changes.
Last year, we learned about safety, we sent everybody down 100%. With, you know, 21 days.
Great. All right, any other questions for Kelly?
I was gonna run through the differences between the grazing stick and the quadrats that we used. All right.
He's armed and dangerous.
All right, so this graph on the left, that's the one I showed you out in the field with our each mixture and how they were pretty variable in their responses to nitrogen. And like I said, I think it was some sampling error. But then when we look over here at this one, I think something happened to that red line. Ignore that one. But now you can see that the trends are pretty similar. So I think the grazing stick, I had a lot more replications, so I think it was just a little bit more, it didn't vary so much with the species. So that was just kind of one point about using the grazing stick versus one single square. Now, if we were going to throw the square 5 times, we probably would have got a better response like this one. When we look at the overall, if we averaged all of those lines together, this green is the one that I showed you, just using the squares. But then if we look at that blue one, it may have overestimated the 2 taller lines. That's our 60 in the spring, or our double application, the spring and fall. They're a little bit taller bars. The scale is the same. But you can see more of a visual response, and I think that correlates to what we were seeing in the field. Whereas on the green bars, they don't look as different. And then lastly, we had those 6 plots with it was either nitrogen or clover. Those were on the last ones that we looked at. When we look at those colored bars, if we've got wheat, the yellow one, they're virtually the same, but we didn't see that in the field. But if we look at the black and white, that's what I used to make the grazing stick. That was used to make this graph. Then in the middle of that wheat, we see a huge drop off, which is what we were seeing in the field. So that's just a plug. If you're in science, you got to make sure your stuff is replicated and accurate, just as there is quite a difference when you only throw out one little square. So is there any questions on this? No? All right, I think that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Kelly.
Yep.